results of an election are surprisingly variable. So you can take the same votes, and just by changing how you draw the districts, you could, for instance, change from 4 Democrats being elected out of 13 in North Carolina to 9 Democrats being elected out of 13. So there's a huge amount of variance that happens in how we interpret this one set of votes based on who drew the maps.
We were on the verge of starting our first meeting for this, actually. Jonathan came in and said, you know, the ruling had come down. And so that was the lawyers had just texted him as he walked in the room, but that's where I learned.
So this idea that the people vote and their will is expressed in the votes, and then we just read that off from the election outcome, there's this whole filter in between.
So given that I live over here and I want somebody representing me who's at least going to be somewhat from where I am, so I want some sense of local representation. Well, what does local mean at that point? And local, to define local, what we do in this country is we sort of cut or partition the state into subregions. Okay, great. So now I have a subregion, and I have somebody from my subregion who's supposedly going to represent me. But it turns out that the way that you cut and the way that you devise these subregions can have a tremendous amount of impact on the overall representation of a state or of the country.
The second question is, why is that unconstitutional? And that's really a question for lawyers, but the take that was in this groundbreaking case, in this case that set a lot of new precedents, we'll see if they hold up when it goes to the Supreme Court, but was the idea that this was political speech. In other words, you voted in an election or you registered in a certain way, and that announced your political affiliation or your preferences, and then you were punished for that. So there's many different facets to this problem. I mean, there's a lot of it which is some data cleaning and data collection. Now, we've written a lot of Python scripts to do that. The main code base currently is written in Java, although we're writing a new version in C. But we're also very interested in making interesting user interfaces that better visualize it on web pages. And then there's also a whole analysis part of this, where we really try to figure out novel and interesting ways to do the analysis, to tell the story, to find the patterns. And we're getting more into that also. The students drive this project as much as anyone. They come up with ideas, they dive into the data, they see new things that maybe we haven't noticed before. They take ideas that we have and run with them in ways we hadn't expected. So there's a Data Plus this summer, and then actually even a Bass Connections all next fall. So really the ideal team has many different people on it. Some people who program in Python, and Java, and C, some people who have some experience, maybe are interested in learning how to visualize and do some data presentation. And then also some people who really have thought a little bit about the mathematics or statistics of doing these analyses. That's all part of this project. And if that excites you and you want to be part of that collaboration, we'd love to hear from you.